All right, the Apostles' Creed, head, heart, and hands. And our focus really is the beginning of the Apostles' Creed was in 325 AD. Christians have been using this for 1,700 years, but when it originated, it was a baptismal creed. We still use it for baptisms. And we have coming out of a church age, which means that most families were Christian and they baptized their kids when they were young and so forth. We're seeing more and more adult baptisms now. We'll have another one next Sunday. But at that time, it was families, it was adults. It was adults saying, hey, I know what I believe with my head, but I've committed my heart to this, and I'm going to live it out in my life. That's what a creed is, finally, right? It's something we live by, and that's our focus. We've turned the Apostles' Creed, in my opinion, into just something like a dusty old textbook on the shelf. Oh, yeah, that's what I believe. That's my head stuff, right? And it was never just meant to be your head stuff, but something that you receive with your heart in this faith relationship with Jesus Christ, and something you live out in your life. That's our focus through this whole series. And we've looked at Jesus for a couple weeks, and today we're going to look at Jesus the rest of the story. All right? Do you know these titles? The Day After Tomorrow, Armageddon, War of the Worlds, 2012, Deep Impact. You know those titles? They're doomsday movies, right? You know what I should have put up there? I thought about this last night. Independence Day. Wasn't that a cool movie? never mind. So, yeah, but yeah, these are the doomsday movies. And we keep making these things, right? I mean, the War of the Worlds, that came from like early 1900s, before even I was born. Yeah. So I mean, these are doomsday movies, and we keep making these things. Why? Because we live in a reality, the human condition, that everything has an end. Isn't that right? I remember my son Jeff, he was maybe 11 or 12 years old, and he played Little League football, and he had this great game, and he was jazzed, and he loved to play, and he gets in the car, and we're driving home, and then he gets real quiet. And I don't know, I'm not sure what's going on in his head, you know? And he looks at me as serious as you could possibly. He says, Dad, I know what I want to do with my life. I said, oh, what's that, honey? He says, I want to be a professional football player. I just love it. I didn't smile, right? Didn't smile. It was so serious to the kid. But I looked at him and I said, well, you know, your dad just turned 40, right? That was a long time ago. Your dad just turned, just turned 40. I said, do you know any 40-year-old football players? And my point was, you can do that. In fact, go after it, kid. Do what you want to do. But it's going to have an ending, and you got to know what you're going to do next. That's the kind of thing we live in, right? If you're raising young kids right now, my goodness, love it. But one day they're going to grow up and they're going to leave. Right? And so it goes. Everything that we experience has an end, including our lives. Right? And so we know intuitively that it all must end because everything we experience, the human condition says it must end. And so we make these movies, man. We tell these stories. I mean, 2012 was based on, what wasn't it, a Mayan prophecy that everything was going to end at 2012? I mean, human beings have always made up these stories about the end. We know it's got to end. And yet every one of these movies has an and then, doesn't it? I don't care how everything was destroyed, whether it's an asteroid or whether it's ecological disaster, whatever it might be, there's always a remnant. Even if the whole planet blows up, there's a little group of people in the spaceship, right? We always have this idea that, well, it goes on. Why is that? The Bible says that God has put eternity into our hearts. Yeah, it's amazing how right the Bible is. All the time, I guarantee it, it's always right. And we see it just in human condition, right? Everything ends, but there's a now then. And we all know it because deep down every human being knows that there's an eternity. There's something that goes on. This is what we're going to talk about today because this is the reality of Jesus beyond what he has done and what he is doing now. Go ahead, put that up for me. Last couple of weeks, we looked at what Jesus did. Cross and the empty tomb. He said, it is finished. Everything's taken care of so that you can be mine, so that every single sin can be forgiven. It's finished on the cross. I took your death on the cross so that you might have my resurrection. And when we looked at how Jesus is continuing to work now to redeem and restore everything in this world through us, right? That he is active and purposefully working in our world today. Today, we're going to talk about the rest of the story. And just so that you see this in the creed, because that's our focus, go ahead, put that up. A couple weeks ago, this is what we looked at. We looked at Jesus Christ, who's God's son, and yet he's a true man, born of the Virgin Mary, and in a point in space and time, suffered under this historical reality where Pontius Pilate was the governor, the Roman governor, and we've dug up stuff with Pontius Pilate on it, right? So in this historical point of time, Christianity is a historical faith. 2,000 years ago, a real man lived, died, and rose again. Nobody else has ever done that. And he said some stuff that's true. How do you know that? Because he's the only guy that lived, died, and rose again, right? So he rose again after he suffered and he died. He went into hell to proclaim his victory, and he lives. And then we say, well, what is he doing now? And it says this: he ascended into heaven and sits at the right hand of God the Father Almighty. And we talked about the right hand of God is everywhere. Jesus fills it with his power. He rules everything for you and for me, and calls us into this ongoing mission to redeem and restore this world that he created. He's on the move, right? For you. There's a wonderful text we looked at. It said, Jesus is always praying for us before the Father's throne of grace. Wow, he's always got you in his heart. He can do that because he's God, not just man, but God. He continues to work for us. That's what he's doing now, but we're looking for what comes next today, right? Does the creed talk about that at all? Now remember, the creed is a summary of everything the apostles wrote down in the New Testament as the Holy Spirit gave them the words, right? So it's got to be just one little phrase, and it's there. This is what it says. Would you read this with me? 1, 2, 3. From there, he will come to judge the living and the dead. That's what's next. He will come. He will come to judge the living and the dead. That's the anda. He's coming, right? Go ahead. The rest of the story is this, that Jesus is coming back at the end of this age. He's coming back at the end of this age. Jesus said this again and again. And remember who he was? Oh yeah, the only guy that died and rose again. Historical reality, huh? You can trust his words. He said this stuff. Watch, here we go. Jesus said, they will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of the sky with power and great glory. How can you trust this? Well, yeah, that's right. He beat death. Did you do that, by the way? Did anybody else do that on the face? Any other religious leader on the face of the earth do that? Jesus did it. You can trust his words. He says he's coming back. Where do you forget that in your life? Where do you forget that before I finish my next breath, Jesus can come crashing through the clouds? And hopefully that doesn't worry you, because hopefully you know this Jesus is the one who loves you unconditionally in his grace. He says he's coming back. And he says it again and again. Jesus said, for the lightning that comes from the east is visible even in the west, so will be the, read the next word, coming of the Son of Man. I was in college. I went home to see mom and dad, and dad always took the Los Angeles Times. And so I got up early one morning and picked up the paper, and I was leafing through it, and there was this huge full-page ad in the Los Angeles Times. Cost a little bucks, huh? Cost a few bucks to do that. And I remember opening it up because I was drinking coffee and I was sleepy, and I opened it up, and this huge ad that says, Jesus Christ has returned and he's living in London. I'm not making this up, guys. That's a Jesus Christ has returned and he's living in London. How did I know that wasn't true? Because out of his own mouth, he says this, when I come back, baby, you're going to see me. I'm going to fill the sky like lightning from the east to the west. You're going to know it, right? So don't be fooled. I'm coming back. You're going to know it, see? Go ahead. It says in Revelation, look, he is coming with the clouds. Read the rest with me. And every eye will see him, right? And it goes on, it says, even those who pierced him. And so it kind of points not only to those who are alive, but those who have died. It points to the resurrection of all flesh. Every eye will see him. He'll come again, come through the clouds of glory, right? And we'll all be raised up, and every eye will see him. Whoa, that's going to be cool, huh? When Jesus was before Pilate, actually before the high priest, the night he would be put on the cross. The high priest asked him this, "Are you the Christ, the Son of God?" Jesus knew that if he said yes, he would die. He would suffer and die on the cross. All he had to do was say no. Of course, that would leave us in a tough place, right? And so this is what he said. He said, I am. I am. Another place, this is called the great witness, the great testimony of Jesus. Martyreo is the Greek word. He said yes, knowing all that would happen to him and knowing all that he would gain for us. I am, said Jesus, but look what he ties this revelation to. I am, said Jesus, and he ties it to his second coming. But let me tell you, the one you're going to hang on the cross, the one who's going to rise from the dead, I'm the King of Kings, and I'm coming back, see? And you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand, the place of power of the Mighty One, and read the next word, coming on the clouds of heaven. You get the point here? There was I was young, really young, just in college, and there was a Christian band that had this song, and they sang, he's coming again, he's coming again, he's coming again. I'll never forget that. I mean, they proclaimed he's coming again. Where don't we live in that reality? Where do we live as if this is all there is? Even though as human beings we know it's got to end. Go ahead, Kevin. Jesus said, and this is the context of all this, Jesus said, at that time, when I come, the sun will be darkened, the moon will not give its light, the stars will fall from the sky, and the heavenly bodies will be darkened. When Jesus comes, the curtain will come down on this created realm. The sun will go dark. Everything we have that is life comes from the sun right now. It will go dark. The moon will go dark because it's reflected light, right? The stars will fall from the sky. There's another place, both Old Testament and New, that talks about it all being rolled up like an old scroll. When Jesus comes in all of his glory, in that moment, the curtain comes down on space and time. 2 Peter puts it like this. It says, but the day of the Lord, that when Jesus comes, will come like a thief. This is really important, guys. Don't spend a lot of energy figuring out when he's going to come. He's going to come. Just live your life in grace. Live your life in him. Live your life as if he's coming in the next moment. Huh? It'll solve everything. Just live your life in that way. So he's going to come like a thief. The heavens will disappear with a roar. The elements will be destroyed by fire. So the Greek word here is elementos. And so the very building blocks of creation will be destroyed by fire. And the earth and everything in it will be laid bare. Curtain will come down on this created realm when Jesus comes in all his glory. The end, right? All those movies, they're right. We gotta know that. They're right. Everything's got to end. And when Jesus comes, he will come to, read the next word, judge the living and the dead. He will come to judge the living and the dead. He's coming as a judge. And in the book of Acts, it's a great text. Peter has been called to the house of Cornelius, which he was a Gentile. This is the beginning of the good news of Jesus going to the Gentiles. And Jesus had to come to Peter in a dream and whack him upside the head, right? And so now he comes to Gentiles, and Peter is telling these Gentiles everything that they're supposed to tell the whole world. And he tells them all about Jesus, suffered, died, and rising. And then he says this. He commanded us to preach. The Greek word here is keruso. So it's not, he commanded us to kind of tell people. Keruso is to proclaim, to let it out there, baby. We're supposed to tell you guys this, right? So he commanded us to preach to the people and to testify. Great word. Remember I said it was martyreo, what Jesus did for us the night he was going to die. He testified that he was who he was, and knowing he would go to the cross. It's the same word. It's our testimony to the world, no matter what it costs us, you see? So we proclaim and we testify that he is the one whom God appointed as, read the next word, judge of the living and the dead. He comes as the judge of all. That's what we're going to look at. What does all that mean? Jesus said, when the Son of Man comes in his glory, all the angels with him, he will sit on his throne in heavenly glory. All the nations will be gathered before him, and he will separate the people one from another, as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. So this is talking about the first judgment that we'll look at. judgment of those who are his and those who are not. And it is for everyone, those who are alive when he comes and those who are raised up. The hour is coming when all who are in the tombs will hear his voice and come out. So this judgment of Christ, it begins here with this judgment. Go ahead. Judgment for eternal life with Jesus. Would everyone say the word grace with me? 1, 2, 3. Grace. Grace is a special kind of love. It's God's undeserved love. This judgment is all about grace. It says, for God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever, read the next word, believes in him shall not perish but have everlasting life. This belief is not just a shaking of the head with your brain, but it's a receiving of Jesus Christ and what he offers you with his heart. It's a relationship of faith with him. We receive this life with him by grace through faith. It has nothing to do with how we live our lives. It has nothing to do with how we live our lives. We are saved. There's a Romans text that says we are made right with God apart from how we live our lives. Apart. It's an exclusive word, apart. This has nothing to do. It doesn't depend on anything you can do or have done or will do. It doesn't depend on any hoop you jump through. It doesn't depend on any mountain you climb. It doesn't depend on any bad thing you don't do or any bad thing you have done. It depends completely on what Jesus Christ has done. Where do you struggle with that? Where do you have a yeah, but in your mind? Yeah, but doesn't it matter that I'm better than that guy over there? Huh? Doesn't it matter that I did this and all those others did? Yeah, but, that sin I can't beat. And no matter how long I go, it raises its ugliest head in my mind again. Don't I have to beat that sin first? Nothing but grace in this judgment. Jesus sees the heart. Jesus sees the heart. And all those who have a whisper of trust in him, this relationship of faith, he calls his own. That's what this judgment is about. And when we talk about this, every single time we talk about this, the Spirit of God touches our hearts and whispers to us that it's true. Receive me and be renewed in me and grow in me in this reality. The Spirit of God is touching your heart right now, and Jesus is whispering to you by his Spirit. It's got nothing to do with how you live your life. And we scream because we want to be our own saviors. We scream because we want to somehow earn it. We scream because we want to be better than the next guy. And Jesus says, no, just rest in my grace. This is a gift to you. Receive it. See? Jesus is the judge of all. There's a verse that says, talks about that we shouldn't judge. And certainly this isn't talking about good and evil, right and wrong. We judge that all the time. We're supposed to, right? He gives us all kinds of ways to in his word reveals what's right and what's not. That's not, it's talking, the Greek word is katisis. It means we have no right to try to look into somebody's heart and condemn them before God. There's only one judge who makes that judgment, and that's Jesus Christ. So by faith, we simply receive what he offers. This public judgment in front of every eye, Jesus will show who are his. Have I said enough so you're not afraid of this? That you know that you live in grace, and that it's through this grace. I know that thing that you did, or that thing that you should have done, or that thing you can't fix. Yeah, and honest, we should all be condemned because of that. But Jesus was condemned in our place. Yeah. And in his resurrection, he gives us his life. We have his life, and he has our death. And it's a grace thing received in this relationship of trust in him. There's another judgment. I hate to call it part two. Can we just say another judgment? And it is a judgment of our actions in light of the cross. Would you read that in light of the cross with me? 1, 2, 3. In light of the cross. This judgment is not about us making ourselves right with God. Jesus took care of that. This is a judgment that says in light of this grace, all right, what you do matters. This is a wonderful gift of God. What you do matters. And at the end of all things, Jesus, the judge, will see everything we've done, and in his grace will reward us for those things that we have done in him. Now, let me be really clear about this. It's got to be grace, because every single thing I do is corrupted by sin. The Bible in the Old Testament says even my righteous acts, the very best things I do, are like filthy rags to Jesus, are like filthy rags to God. So this isn't about stick my thumb in the plum and say, whoa, look what I did. What this is about is everything that we do in our lives from the love of God in Jesus Christ, in his will for us as we live our lives, will last in eternity. And Jesus will declare that. There's a section in, I think it's in Romans, or Corinthians rather, where Paul says, hey, look, I've laid the foundation of the good news of Jesus, the gospel. Now, what are you going to build on it? If you build on it here with straw and hay, stuff that's not of God, it's all going to get burned up. You're going to be saved, but it's all going to be burned up. But if you build on it with costly jewels and gold, things that are of God, it'll last in eternity. There is this judgment of everything that everyone does. And it's this wonderful gift that God gives to us and says, what you do matters. Isn't that a wonderful gift? We're not all about machines. You know, a lot of people say, well, nothing matters because God's got it. No. Somehow in God's economy, everything you do matters. And there's these wonderful verses, stuff like this. What you reap is what you sow is what you'll reap. We today, sometime today, we'll talk about the announcements that we will feed 35,000 children, 35,000 meals, because you have given offerings that $10,000 will go to feed my starving children, and we'll have over 100 people that packages those things. What you do matters, see? Everything that we do in ministry is dependent on us. Now, certainly God, by his Spirit, will bless things, right? But the point is, what we do matters, and what you'll sow, that's what you'll reap. It matters. Moms and dads, it matters how close you bring your children up in Jesus. Husbands and wives, it matters how you treat one another, how you forgive one another, how you cherish each other, it matters. You see, everything we do matters. That's what God is saying here. In Corinthians it says, for we must all appear before the judgment seat of Christ, that each one may receive what is due him for the things done while in the body, whether good or bad. It matters, see? Some of the stuff we do that's not of God, it'll be burned up. But the wonderful message here is the stuff we do in God's grace and his will, even though it's always corrupted by sin, will last in eternity, and this is a gift of God's grace to us. What you do matters. Isn't that awesome stuff? In every moment of every day, with everything you do, it matters. And everything you do in him will last in eternity. Go ahead, Kevin. Jesus said, I tell you the truth, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you have done for me. You see, he talks about a cup of cold water. He talks about these little things. We think in great and grand terms, right? I think that I really think that if you were just talk to him, he'd say, you know, like when you change a diaper and you do it because you love this child, that's a great and wonderful work. When you put your arm around your husband or wife and forgive them, even though they fouled up, that's a great and wonderful work. When you bring offerings so that we can feed 35,000 children, that's a wonderful work. You see, every little thing, it all adds up to great things. A cup of cold water, what you do for the least of these are going to shine in eternity. They make a difference. So much of the time we think our lives don't make a difference and what we do doesn't matter. Everything we do matters. That's a gift, you see. In 2 Timothy, Paul is writing to Timothy, who's a young pastor, and he's going to give him some instructions. But it's not just to Timothy, it's recorded for all of us, these instructions. And this is the prelude to that. It ties into what we're talking about. It says, in the presence of God and of Christ Jesus, who will judge the living and the dead, and in view of his appearing, he's coming again, right, as the judge, and his kingdom, I give you this charge. So Timothy, what you do matters here. You're a young pastor, but I got to tell you, these are the things that you ought to be focused on, Tim. You see, it's not just, well, God's in control, so just go ahead and do it. No. Do this, Timothy. Not because you're going to earn your place in heaven, but because of what you do matters for the good of those around you. And this is what it says. I didn't do all the words, but some of them. Preach the word, be prepared in season. Now, in other words, share Jesus in good times and in bad, in rough situations and in good, not just with your words, but with your actions. Share Jesus. Oh, and do the work of an evangelist. Evangelist means a gospelist, one who shares Jesus again. Don't let anyone tell you, by the way, that a pastor shouldn't be an evangelist. I'm not making this stuff up, right? Black and white. Do the work of an evangelist. And it's not just for pastors, because quite frankly, we don't live in the Old Testament. It's not the priests and the people, but rather we all together are the priests and kings of God, every single one of us, right? What we do matters. So, keriso, preach the word. Be powerful in how you share Jesus and his love. Do the work of sharing Jesus with those who are close to you and those who are a little farther away, not only with your words, but with your actions. Because everything you do matters. God uses every single thing. Oh, and what you sow, that's what you'll reap. Isn't that amazing? So you want to reap great things for the kingdom and in God's grace, for the people around you and his love and sharing him, then live your lives that way. Oh, not because you're earning anything, but because you live in this grace that you know in Jesus Christ. And that you're not tied to this world because you know what? Oh yeah, it's going to end. And you know that Jesus is coming again. And he's ushering in this brand new reality. Go ahead. The end game, life with God. 1 Thessalonians 4, 13 and 5. It's one of my favorite verses. It says, brothers and sisters, we don't want you to be ignorant about those who have fallen asleep or to grieve like the rest of people who have no hope when people die around you. We believe that Jesus died and rose again, and so we believe that God will bring with Jesus those who have fallen asleep in the faith. So it talks about everything we're talking about. It says when Jesus comes, he's going to bring those who have died. There'll be the resurrection of all flesh. We'll have souls and body together. Those who are his will be taken home to heaven. And then it says this, and so we will be with the Lord forever. Read the rest of it with me. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Therefore, encourage each other with these words. Have you been encouraged today? I want you to be encouraged today. And knowing these things, I want you to encourage each other, those who are close to you and those who are a little farther away. Because this is what comes after the end game. This is a little remnant who's escaping planet Earth in the spaceship, right? And yet, it's all of God's people. Encourage each other. Go ahead. Book of Revelation says, then I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth had passed away. When does that happen? When Jesus comes, right? But there's going to be something new. I saw the new Jerusalem. This is the people of God coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride. This relationship that we have with Jesus as his bride, right? And I heard a loud voice, again, this keriso, right? It's proclaiming this. You got to hear this, right? A loud voice. Now the dwelling of God is with men, and he will live with them. They will be his people, and he will wipe every tear from their eyes. The New Testament, or the whole Bible, gives a shadow of this, a whisper. In the Old Testament, you had the pillar of fire and the cloud that the children of Israel followed. And then when Moses built the tabernacle, this Shekinah, this glory of God, this presence of God filled the tabernacle, that first place of worship of God's people. Then in Solomon's temple, All right, Solomon built the temple after David, and the Shekinah, the glory of God, the presence of God filled that temple. Because of the sin of the people, the temple was destroyed, the Babylonian captivity happened, and even when the people returned unto Nehemiah and built a new temple, the Shekinah of God never filled it. When did that happen? When Jesus walked into it. When Jesus walked into it. And now in this world, where's the Shekinah of God? Where's the temple of God, the presence of God, where God dwells with the people of this world? It's us. We together are the presence of God in this world. We are the building, the temple that he builds for the sake of this world, the place where God is for the sake of the whole world. But when Jesus comes in all of his glory, face to face, in a way we can only begin to dream about, his presence will be with all people. His presence will dwell with us, not through any kind of mediary, but face to face. He will wipe every tear from our eyes. There will be no more death or mourning or crying or pain, for the old order of things has passed away. Something brand new has come, and it's perfect and it's holy. And this reality has no ending, no doomsday movie. It forever. Eternity is, it's not even forever, it's the absence of time. This perfect moment that lasts forever. And it says, he who was seated on the throne said, read the rest of it, I am making everything new. That's the final word. So this week, where do you need to hear anew that Jesus is coming again? Where do you need to see him as the judge of all who offers grace to all to be received by faith? Where do you need to remember in light of Jesus the judge that what you do matters? That wonderful gift that we have, huh? And where do you need to remember the end of this age and the glory and joy of the next that the coming of Jesus will usher us into? And having remembered, where do you need to be renewed and living in these realities? By grace, through faith, do it. You know it with your head, receive it with your heart, live it out in your life. For Jesus Christ is Lord. May God's Spirit guide you in this week. Amen.